Now, the first motion that will be before them is on the subject of a modern constitution, Composite 54, but what it's really about is this: it expresses concern over the unaccountability of security agencies such as MI5, and therefore calls for a Labour Party and a parliamentary committee to oversee the work of the intelligence and security services. In particular, it says, these committees should examine Harold Wilson's resignation as Prime Minister and the work of the intelligence services in Northern Ireland at that time. This is a fine old story, now being removed by Paul Hallam from Isha CLP.
Comrades, this motion moves to investigate and oversee the work of MI5 and other secret services. George Orwell once stated, England, and I think we could include the whole of Britain in this, England, said Orwell, is the greatest country in the world, but in the wrong hands. The question is, in whose hands is it? Recent years have shown that the British Secret Service is the least accountable in Western Europe. It answers to nobody but itself. It is an organisation that is not democratically elected, has no fixed rules, and works above and beyond the law. A recent Channel 4 report exposed how MI5 holds papers that in some strange Orwellian way are filed not for ministerial eyes. If the leaders of a democratically elected country cannot view them, exactly who can? Who are these privileged few people who have got the right to see what we cannot? Even in the good old days when we had a Labour government, Harold Wilson, the Prime Minister of a West European country, a man democratically elected to lead Parliament, even he was allegedly subject to interference and intimidation. These are not just hearsay. These events have been reported in numerous publications, including Spycatcher, David Lee's The Wilson Pot, and Paul Foot's Who Framed Colin Wallace, where an ex-British Army intelligence officer in disinformation in Northern Ireland testifies that Wilson was the subject of black propaganda operations. If this can happen to a world statesman, surely it can happen to any of us. Every organisation that may not fit into the way of thinking of these privileged few can be discriminated against. Any action can be taken with no remorse, no accountability to the British people. The privileged few may tap phones, open mail and burgle anybody, from members of Parliament to union leaders to radical journalists, perhaps even the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Reports indicate that almost 3 million people in this country are in intelligence files. That means any person can be listed as dangerous by an office in London and refuse jobs, homes and visas, all without the individual's knowledge. As we approach what a so-called new era in world peace and cooperation, these covert actions must be scrutinised and made democratically accountable to Parliament and to these people sitting up here. Remember that if world leaders can be manipulated and discredited in this way, what can happen to the average person in the streets? Composite 54 in no way wishes to close the security services, but wishes to monitor them, observe them, and make them answerable to the people of the country they are said to represent. I ask you to pull Composite 54.
Nick Kent to second.
It's Tony Blair up there. Interesting to see what phrases they use when they're talking to other members of the Labour Party. Mr. Blair used the phrase friends. Now this motion is seconded. Just to let you know in advance, we'll soon have to pause for the news.